Market meltdown, Evergrande, contagion, inflation, uranium melting down. Is it all about to end? I am Gerardo Del Real along with my co-host, Mr. Nick Hodge, and this is episode 135 of Bizarro World. Is that correct, Nick? Is this episode 135?
Sequentially, I think so, because last one was 134.
Is that how it works? Fucking amazing. How are you doing, Mr. Hodge?
I have a bit of, I don't know what it is, laryngitis or quasi lack of a voice, but I'm there 100% mentally, and sorry that I sound a little sling blade-ish.
No. You sound raspy and ready to get into the isms of the market. Let's get right into it. Somewhere Harry Dent is jumping up and down, clapping his hands excitedly. I'm telling everybody how he's been right for the past 12 years. That the market is melting down and that the sell-off is the beginning of the end. And I'm pretty sure that you know how I feel about it, but I would love to get your more nuanced take on the overall major U.S. indices. Let's get into that first, right? At its low, the market closed down. It was down almost 1,000 points. Yep. I think it closed just shy of 600 points down. So, there was some buying that came in here later in the day, but obviously, they got all the boxes on CNBC and you got all the tweets going up and your thoughts. What do you think?
It was a fun day. So it was the air quotes worst sell-off in the past 6 months. And so, I mean, that's half a year. And so there's something to be said for that. It was a heck of a sell-off, especially as it went past, where it opened up sort of down 600 to 7, 8, 9, almost down 1,000 points on the Dow, like you said. Narratives are narratives. Fear is fear. And if it bleeds, it leads. But I think it's another buy the dip opportunity, even though it was a bit more abrupt and a bit more, let's go with stiff than ones in the past couple of months. And word choice is important, Gerardo.
Stiff ones.
And so, in the middle of the day, I was a little bit scared, right? I got a little emotional, but, then what happened? I pulled up my charts and I checked the things that I've been telling you all to check, right? Where is the VIX at? Where is the dollar at? And so for me, on days like this, I stay glued to the VIX. And so I had actually tweeted last week that there's no fear in the market at all, right? And then here you get this little thing today. And so I put up a chart this morning. We can get into Evergrande if you want. That's the long answer, Gerardo. Sorry. That's the Chinese real estate firm that, all the media companies and the news are blaming today's sell-off on. But that situation's sort of been developing for a while. In reality, I don't think you need a reason. It was just time for a sell-off, right? But nonetheless, China's got this Evergrande company, one of the largest real estate companies in China. China cracked down on sort of that part of the industry, and there's concerns. Well, not concerns. They're not going to fucking make their bond payment, basically. But the bond is already down. Like their bonds had already sold off, and so the worries is that people that had invested, given them money for real estate projects, would lose that money, and then there would be global contagion. So, that's a fun thing to run with, and a good reason, I guess, to have a global stock meltdown. But I don't think that's going to be the case here. And so if you look at the VIX, which is what I was talking about, I posted a trend line this morning saying global contagion, like I was yawning. It's not going to be a global meltdown, right? And then a couple hours later, sure enough, right on the nose is where the VIX went to its downward trend line. It didn't, want to punch through it. So it turned around. It was the same way that stocks turned around at the end of the day. And so I gave you a long answer there, but you wanted a bit of nuance. I don't think that this market comes crashing down. I think that the Fed is meeting this week to tell you about how much more dovish they're going to be and that they're still not going to taper because they can't. And I think that our earnings season is right around the corner, and I think that you'll get to get some reality instead of narrative. And what else do I think? I think inflation is still rampant, like absolutely rampant, and no one is talking about it because
transitory and rampant
got their ass kicked off the field.
The fuck off the field, team transitory dumbasses. Well, look, obviously, love the nuanced take. Completely agree on the VIX. Definitely elevated fear in the market. I am going to give the simple analysis and put my tinfoil hat on. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Fed begins a 2-day meeting tomorrow. And I think all this is traders and the market signaling to Mr. Powell to behave himself. I really do believe it's that simple. I think for all of the fear in the market today, it didn't seem too chaotic. I mean, everything was down. Let's get into it. Uranium pulled back 20%. I'll spare you the suspense. I think that's a heck of an opportunity. 20, 30, 40%, heck, 50% corrections after the price run that those companies have had in the uranium space. More than justified. Bitcoin down to 43,000. I think that's an opportunity. The overall US indices down a couple of percentage points. Really, not too big a deal. It's 1.7%. On the day. If the temperature dropped from 95 degrees to 93 and a half, would you be fearful? I don't know. It didn't seem like a chaotic sell-off to me. It seemed pretty orderly in the way the market closed today. The major US indices, I think they're just signaling to Jerome to make sure he's got his act together for the next couple of days. Thoughts on the uranium sell-off opportunity, or do they have a little bit more pulling back to do there, Mr. Hodge?
I haven't pulled up a chart specifically, but I think it's an opportunity no matter how you look at it, right? For a couple of reasons. One, and like you said, they were due to sell off. It was nice that you got it commensurately with a broader market sell off, right? And so it was a nice little catalyst for that to happen. The Sprott is still buying, and you've been writing about this a lot more. Over 1.3 billion that at the market facility is up to now, and what else is, the uranium price has only gotten to $50, right? Still not where it has to be for the global cost of production. And so I think it's an opportunity. Opportunity looks different in everybody's lap. So if you didn't have any, it's certainly an opportunity to get in. If you were already in, depending on how you managed it this far, it's an opportunity to re-add, or it's an opportunity to watch everyone else scramble. I mean, it depends on where you are and when you bought, right?
And what your end game is. And I think this is a good opportunity, Nick, as it relates to whether it's uranium or Bitcoin or gold or, your favorite explorer, whatever sector you speculate in, real estate. It's so important to define your timelines. It's so important to define your risk tolerance. It's so important to really know why you're risking speculative capital in the markets. I mean, there are no guarantees. So if you are in the uranium space for a double or a triple and you can't stomach a 30 or 40% loss on any given day or any given week, maybe you don't want to speculate in that sector right now, because this is a very, very volatile sector. We have companies that were 10 cents, just over a year ago that traded as high as $1.18. I'm talking fission uranium now, and closed today at 89 cents. That kind of market volatility, when you get the kind of gains that we've seen in the uranium space, is going to continue on. But I liken it to a kind of like a slingshot, right? You need that new energy. You need to get those soft hands, those shaky hands, those nervous Nellies out of the market for the next run up. Things cannot continue to go straight up. So Harry Dent may have been right today, but I suspect by the end of the year, Harry Dent will still be Harry Dent and will be a great contrarian indicator. I also suspect that those of you out there that believe that this uranium bull market is still a couple of years off, good luck with that. I think you're late, and I think we're in the very, very early stages. If you want to use a football analogy, since football is back, it's we're halfway through the first quarter of the game in the uranium space. So a lot to like there. Mr. Hodge, are you still holding? Are you still hodling? Are you sitting on your Bitcoin, or did you tap that?
Nope, I'm a hodler. I'm not buying any more here. That was a heck of a punch in the face. That was a 10% drawdown very quickly in the Bitcoin. No, I'm a hodler. I'm not trading the Bitcoin, and I guess a couple of reasons I can give you. One is that there's not zero transaction cost yet, like there is with stocks, and so I actually have to pay when I move capital in and out of cryptocurrencies, and I don't like that. And so I'd like to be very high conviction on the moves, and frankly move larger amounts if I'm going to move in and out of Bitcoin. And so I haven't looked at buying more since we were having that $28,000 level talk a bit ago. And the other reason is that I want to do a bit more investigating into Ethereum. I might start to initiate a position there as well, as it relates to, and this is nothing earth shattering. It's functionality and its place in the future of fintech, and actually it's something that I said about Bitcoin. The cost of transactions, namely that they're cheaper with Ethereum, and so. Anyway, no, I'm content to hold my Bitcoin. I'm up significantly.
I sense a report on cryptos coming.
Perhaps.
Inflation. Do we want to get into that? I mean, look, there's not much to say. We've been saying it, whether you're a subscriber of Nick's letters, my letters, you just listen to this podcast. You hear us rant and rave on other platforms at a conference, whatever the case may be. Anybody that knows us knows which side we're on. We've long said that this inflation is going to become structural, and every now and then somebody puts a chart up of lumber pulling back 30%. They ignore the first 600-700% move higher. But where are you on inflation, Nick?
Well, and they ignored lumber over the past month because it was back up another 25 or 30% in the past couple of weeks. No, look, I don't hear a lot from Team Transitory anymore. In fact, I hear either outright lies, like this was part of our model, or they back out everything that's actually up so it fits their model, which is also basically a lie. It's an untruth. And I see basically inflation continuing to run rampant in all sorts of things. Like the CRB commodity index, for example, continues to go up. Like it did not pull back.
Record highs, everybody.
Yeah. And so the other thing I was going to point to was lithium. I mean, I saw one thing last week where the price had nearly doubled from July to August in a spodumene auction in Australia. And so, and then, housing continues to go up. And so, and of course, gas and stuff is still expensive. And so, inflation continues to be run away. And that's how you sort of get, I think, mired in the complexity of markets. But to bring it back home, right, the Fed has been buying these bonds. They backed themselves into a corner because if you take your thumb off the bond scale, the interest rates go up, and then the debt is such that you can't make your interest rate payments, a la Evergrande, right? And so
Evergrande.
That's sort of, I don't know how you say it. That's sort of where we are, and at the same time, that backing into a corner has profound effects for the average person in the country who doesn't seem to understand those profound effects in time.
Profound effects. My home here, pivoting a little bit, my brain, my weird brain and the weird connections it makes. So speaking of profound effects, my home state of Zacatecas, where my parents are where we're off from, and where my parents live, is now number one for the highest rate of homicides per 100,000 residents. Nick, we did it. I'm sorry to hear that as well. We are now at 52 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants. To put some perspective to that, Austin, which is growing very, very quickly, is a city of approximately 1 million people. And here in Austin, we just had, our 60th murder, which is an all-time high for Austin. More people, more violence. We can get into the reasons why another time. But I point that out to say that if Zacatecas had the population at this rate, Austin wouldn't be dealing with, 60 murders, they'd be close to 600. So just some context and perspective about how crazy the situation is out there. And for those of you that look at those numbers and are just, blown away, these are just the reported murders. Because I have news for a lot of you. A lot of families don't report when people go missing for fear of retribution. A lot of people have sons or daughters kidnapped or taken, and a lot of people have nothing to do with anything, but some people have things to do with things. And so when some family members come up missing, oftentimes those kidnappings or those deaths aren't even reported. And there's so many big, large scale clandestine graves where people are brought out 10, 20, 30 at a time and just, kind of dug up. And so anyhow, yeah, profound effects, drug profits, the non-decriminalization of drugs, and American guns and Israeli guns equals Zacatecas, which, again, pivoting and making a connection, we now have 8,000 Haitians at the Mexican border. And, for all of the scaremongering that goes on Twitter and the news, Haiti's suffering from their president being assassinated, an earthquake. We talked about this months ago, how, we're going to start seeing more dislocations and situations with countries where the instability that's happening is going to lead to people literally just fighting for their lives and being hungry and trying to figure out how to provide for themselves and their kids. And I think, it's so sad what we're seeing at the border. And I got to say, this administration is sitting on its ass. And so far, I haven't seen anything that says humanitarian America, or, let's not kick people while they're down. I see quite the opposite with some of the articles that I'm reading by some of the bigger outlets. So, it's not to say we just open our borders and allow everybody in. I think there's a better approach. But we also shouldn't be literally whipping people that are just trying to figure out how to get some water, how to get some food, how to get, sustenance for their kids. I think there's a better approach, and I'm kind of disappointed that as a country we can't do better.
Well, the whole immigration system is broken, Gerardo. I mean, you know that. And so there's a whole bigger, larger issue going on there that is, again, not as complex as markets pretend to be either, right? And then you have to, get into all the pet causes, the reasons why it doesn't get fixed, influence and things like that. And so in a very real way, what you say is true. They're turning them away at the border. The articles I was reading were saying that they're going to send them back to Haiti, right? And so at the same time have a big Afghani refugee problem as well that was in large part caused by the U.S. And so the U.S. accepting refugees on that front as well. I'm not one to have all the answers on that front, except to say that I see it in our community. I mean, my daughter's, I think, project for this week was to, bring some school supplies and things for the Afghani families that were, being resettled in the Spokane area. And so it's affecting people all over and people all over lending support. And so, that's how I try to look at it, help where I can. If I were a senator or congressman, maybe I think about it differently. But yeah, certainly a big issue there that needs to be addressed, and certainly could be if anybody had a conviction to get it done.
Look, we had a situation here in Austin that is a different situation, but, for similar reasons, right? People in trouble, mental health, and everything that goes along with homelessness. And our downtown had a situation where for the past couple of years, it just, it was homeless people all over the place, right? And people were setting up literal campsites downtown overlooking, the Colorado River, right? $1 million views, and you couldn't walk down the sidewalk. They went ahead and reversed the well, let me provide some context. Let me back up. A year and a half or two ago, there was a law that was passed that basically allowed for anyone to camp outside. And that turned into basically homeless people going, hey, we're going to pitch a tent right here in front of the river and the lake and just kind of take over the downtown area, predominantly the nicer part of town, where all the tourism happens. And so if you've been to Austin for the last couple of years, you've seen the homelessness presence just increase. they reversed the decision to allow public camping. They did this a month and a half ago, and they had a 3-phase program to either relocate or help provide shelter or help provide resources to the people that were downtown. Today, you drive downtown, you may see a homeless person somewhere in a corner somewhere. It's not anything like it was. So what changed? Political will, being proactive, both sides coming together and coming through on some common sense legislation. We can do things proactively before the problems happen, because guess what, people? Problems will continue to happen. It's interesting to me that when I see the instability in Haiti and in Cuba and in Mexico, and we talk about a broken immigration system, a system that, by the way, hasn't done anything to address legal or illegal immigration since at least 1987, the last time Ronald Reagan, allowed a lot of people, including my parents, to gain residency if they could provide proof that they had been paying taxes, even if it was under a different social security number, and if they could pass a background check, if they didn't have any felonies. So if you were being a law-abiding citizen, you had paid your taxes, and you were compliant, you could apply for your residency, work your way into the system, come out from the shadows, contribute. And look, in 87, I don't know if people remember, but we were in the midst of a recession in the country. And I think, allowing people to come out of the shadows and providing structural upward mobility helped the real estate market come back. The 90s, we had obviously an economy that was booming again. It was working for a lot of people. And today, it's the complete opposite. We still haven't done anything about immigration. Wealth inequality is at an all-time high. I read an article this week, Nick, where this is fucking hilarious. Funny, not funny. The Fed chief, Jerome Powell, was owning the same securities that the central bank was buying during this whole COVID pandemic. And when CNBC reached out, the Fed said, oh no, I owned those municipal bonds in question in a joint account over which I had no control, right? And a managed account that he said was a blind account. He didn't own it. So CNBC does some digging, and no, it turns out he owned it in a family trust. He owned it in an account which he had control. It wasn't in the family trust. And so now that the Fed's been caught, and it's not just the Fed that's done this, Pelosi's done it, a lot of other people have done it. Ron Paul did it, Rand Paul, excuse me. Now they're going to have what they say is a review of the policy to avoid the appearance of impropriety. What a crock of shit. No shit, Sherlock, right? As my friend Paul would say, it's just, I think it speaks to the hypocrisy in the markets. I think it speaks to the hypocrisy in our country. And I think it speaks to the hypocrisy in the world that there is political will to find solutions to things when we want there to be, and turn a blind eye to everything when there's no good reason to actually do things other than it's the right thing to do. And, we should all work on doing more of the right thing, whether or not people are looking.
Wow, 100%. That's the golden rule, right? That's what global religions and things are based on. But you don't need pious deities to be a good human, is what I've always concluded. And yes, of course, the hypocrisy is rampant. I don't know where you want to go from there, but there's plenty more to talk about.
Fire.
Oh,
Fire.
Gosh. Well, I guess I would talk about Facebook, right? And how, what you always knew is now coming out as truth, right? It's, the things that that you can see, right? That have been apparent for years are now, coming out in the open, whether that's like you were just talking about, the Fed, using itself as its own backstop, profiting from its actions with its personal members, or here in Facebook's case, what's coming out in the past week, and there's all sorts of stuff. Namely that they let a large group of quote unquote influencers operate outside their rules, basically say things that were against their stated public discourse rules as far as misinformation, disinformation, conspiracies, etc. And we also learned that groups outside of the U.S. control some very large Facebook groups that are like U.S. centric.
And social media lobbyist. That's what it sounds like.
Essentially, yeah, like non-US groups control like the largest African American Facebook group and large Native American and women, like American women Facebook groups, but they're operated by shady non-US based people, right? And so their only aim is, like I just said, mis and disinformation, and they're not, what they purport to be. So. And then the other thing we learned about Facebook and Instagram this week is that they know how bad their algorithm is for teens, how it contributes to anxiety and depression and all this sort of stuff, and yet don't do anything about it. So, writing on the wall, and I think people starting to realize it. And then I guess I would also have to talk about taxes. I don't know. I'm just sort of jumping all over the place, but
welcome to my world, Nick.
I know you had AOC wearing the dress last week at the gala, right? The Met Gala tax the rich, which sort of drove the narrative.
She looked good too.
There's all sorts of things you can say about that, right? I mean, the Met Gala itself is, it's. I think people don't even know what it is. Frankly, I'm not even tuned into what it is, but I think people see that it's sort of like the aristocracy putting on a show is the point I want to make, right? And I'm going to start with the masks and I'll get to the taxes, but I'm sure you've seen the images of like no one on the red carpet wearing a mask, but like the people who are carrying the tails of their dress, including Miss AOC, are masked up, right? And just the blatant visual hypocrisy of seeing an image of that, right? And you should know that there's something amiss there, right? When they're telling you to do one thing. And I'm just talking about the masks. I haven't even gotten to the taxes yet. And you can see them doing the other. And I got to talk about the San Francisco mayor just for a second, who was, caught, I don't know what she was doing at a club, getting her vibe on, imbibing and saying that, she was caught up in the spirit of the moment and she was eating and drinking. And that's exactly the fucking point, right? Like I've been saying for months, like, why do I have to wear a mask when I walk into a restaurant, but not when I sit down? It simply doesn't pass the common sense test. But here, instead of just saying that, she gets up there and defends herself, right? And it's like, no, that's fucking hypocrisy. Like, it doesn't make sense. You were up there fucking shaking your booty with your mask off. Clearly, you don't think that you got to wear masks. Like, don't come the next day when you're sober and tell me that you got to wear masks. Anyway, on to the taxes. So AOC goes to this event with all her rich pals. She's got no problem palling around with the rich and is no doubt increasing her net worth as she goes through Congress. She likes to make a statement, which good for her. She drives the narrative just like Elon Musk does. And she's good at that. And she did it again. Except some hypocritical things to point out. The designer of her dress owed back taxes.
So rich in irony. I think that was your tweet. So good.
Yeah, it's like, come on, man, And so like you're wearing like a dress by a designer, like you are in the rich, right? And so now let's distinguish from the rich and the super rich and the corporations, which she needs to do a better job at doing. The rich is one thing. The rich pay their taxes. I'm rich. I pay my taxes.
Yeah.
You're rich. You pay your taxes. The wealthy don't pay their taxes and the corporations don't pay their taxes. And there is a distinction and it needs to be made by her and others because they do themselves a disservice when they say tax the rich because they get people like me riled up who would otherwise be on their side. And so then you get a report this week, just today, in fact, I think from I think it was the New York Times. If not, you'll get my retraction next week. That
like the Fed.
Exactly. That exactly goes on what you think and what you always say goes on, Gerardo, that the largest accounting firms in the country encourage their upper management constituents, employees, to go do a stint with the government to get tax rules changed in favor of their wealthiest clients, individuals and corporations, and then go back into the private world to become partner and get higher pay. And so here's just one example. Like Deloitte has been doing this for years, would send someone over to the Treasury Department. This is just one rule that got changed, right? To get like restaurants included as manufacturers by saying that they Did you read this? Because you're laughing already. They manufacture slices of cheesecake out of a whole cheesecake, right? So they get restaurants included in the tax break during their stint at Treasury, and then they go back to Deloitte and become whatever, head of restaurant group accounting, right? And that is the payola. That is the revolving door. That is exactly how it works. It's right out there in the open, and it is the uber super wealthy corporations. It is not the rich. And AOC has her finger on the wrong pulse. And if you believe otherwise, then I think you got your finger on the wrong pulse as well, because it's clear as day what's going on with the taxes. And then you get Biden up there talking about how no corporations pay taxes in the past year. Yeah, well, no shit, because they got these loopholes open that you guys don't close. Let's focus on that instead of the rich and, cutting off the high income in the hundreds of thousands, when we're talking about people with hundreds of millions, right?
And again, it's about accountability and focusing the attention where it should be, right? We all want accountability. We all want people to pay their fair share. We want government to manage it correctly. But I completely agree. Miss AOC, and for all the brilliance that's there, because she is a very qualified, intelligent young lady, absolutely has to message better when it comes to this tax the rich stuff. Because yeah, it's sassy, and yeah, you look good in the dress, girl, and yeah, it was a cute dress, and you made your point. But man, what a wasted opportunity. What a wasted opportunity with everything going on to really drive home, a point of accountability, as opposed to just marginalizing maybe people that aren't the problem. Like you said, right? I'm not wealthy, I'm rich. And yeah, I make the IRS wait a little bit because that's how I do it, but I absolutely pay my taxes. And so, to frame it in a way that further divides, people contributing to the system in a pretty substantial way, and people that contribute and help provide the little social safety net that we provide for people in this country. I think it's disingenuous. I don't know if that was her intent, but it didn't come off. And mind you, again, you and I, Nick, are speaking from a position of privilege, as doing all right for ourselves, right? So of course we took a little offense to it. I did as well. But yeah, missed opportunity, and hopefully she messages a little better on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
Love it. You got blood on your hands, Nick?
Yes. Now I can do the right. So, let me a little bit of context. And sorry, this actually, I laughed at this, and I don't even know the guy's name. So let me pull it up before I go.
You do that, and I'll provide the segue. You know why I thought about the blood on your hands thing? Because of the dress, and it said tax the rich in red, the blood, and that's where my dumb brain went. So that's what that was. Blood on your hands, Mr. Hodge.
So, you remember, obviously after 9/11, there was some country songs that gained a lot of traction and sold a lot of albums. That Toby Keith was talking about going to war, and Alan Jackson was talking about where were you when the world stopped turning. And giant songs. I don't know if they won Grammys or not, but huge songs, is still big to this day, right? And so the other day I saw a conservative singer-songwriter John Rich tweets about another song. He's big on the conservative side of things. I'm sure you knew that. But he tweeted about this other song that this other guy named John Ondrasik had put out. And the song was called Blood on My Hands. I've got blood on my hands. And it was about that dark, dark day that no one will soon forget in American history, that was surely on par with 9/11 and other major events. It needs to be commemorated in a country song. The Afghan pullout, he wrote a song about, and it's about how he's got blood on his hands. And I thought this was, I thought it was funny because, first of all, I don't know who this guy is, but it seemed like a shameless, and I'm just going to call it what it is, a shameless way to capitalize on fan base that will be receptive to such messaging. Right now, I don't want to say he should have written the song about other administrations, because you could say that. I don't want to say that this guy isn't like a
real American,
staunch supporter of the war in Afghanistan, which I'm sure he's been talking about fervently before this month.
Sure he has.
And last month. But it just seemed like, perfect. Just like, everybody caters to their base and everything is hyper partisan. And it just was the perfect encapsulation of that for me, how, 2 weeks after the Afghan pullout, you've got a song out about how we've got blood on our hands and you don't understand what's going on. And you just want to understand, and you've got blood on your hands. It's like, oh yeah, man. Like, have you paid attention to American foreign policy for the past like half a fucking century? Like where have you been, guy? And so anyway, it sounded to me like this guy was trying to Alan Jackson, the Afghan pullout, and I thought it spoke to a similar. It was just the same, man, and I guess that's how I'll frame it. Like this guy putting out this song is the same as AOC wearing her dress. It's just fucking red meat for their base, and it doesn't mean anything or impact you one way or the other. So fucking ignore it.
Tied in beautifully. I couldn't have said that better myself, Mr. Hodge. Excellent work. Both sides do it, and again, we could be so much more productive. We can be so much better as a country and as human beings. We just went back to some common sense and some accountability and like fact-based narratives, as opposed to I just want to be right and, catcall my base and dog whistle to my base on both sides of it. All you're going to get is the same group of people nodding their heads in the same direction. Hard to make progress when you're just talking to yourself.
That's it. And so, yeah, for me, just to bring it back to, I guess, what our messaging is doing those things for yourself. Right. And like, I have a good tax plan. I have a good tax attorney, and I'm a libertarian when it comes to war, and didn't think that we should have been there anyway. So at the end of the day, I'm not affected by this country song, the Afghan pullout, or what Miss AOC is talking about, because I focused on myself instead of whatever they've been talking about. Right.
Agreed. Absolutely agree. I failed to make a point that I wanted to make when you were talking about Facebook. And that's, there was a report earlier last week, again, saying what we already knew, but just how toxic social media can be. And just how detrimental it is specifically to young girls, right? And so it's worthwhile. It's a good read. I'll put a link up, but the headline from the Wall Street Journal is Facebook knows Instagram is toxic for teen girls. And this was verified through company documents, right? And so, of 98 students, I think, that responded to an internal survey, nearly 90% said that social media affected them negatively. And so, look, if you're a parent, if you have teens, especially if you have, young girls at home, so important to have these conversations with your kids and just be as aware as you possibly can. Because, man, it can be a real shit show on there, as you know, Nick.
It's incredible, right? And, I think for a long time, I thought that antitrust or oligopoly legislation or whatever was going to come for Facebook. And it seems like, that's finally coming home to roost. People are finally starting to, get that message. And, going back to the politics, like those are the things that should have been like an issue of 5-10 years ago, right? Like regulating these tech companies. And in an era where things move as fast as they do, you can't have a government that responds as slowly as it does. And that's part of what has to institutionally change, right? To better regulate these industries as fast as the industries pop up and change and morph. And it's rampant. I'm going to make a segue here. I hope you don't mind. But like, breaking up tech has been on the wall for a long time, and they're just getting around to they're just now getting around to it. And I'm going to talk about the chicken now because, we've known for a long time about these industrial ag companies, how bad they are, forget the animals. I mean, they treat the animals horribly, and that's bad. But they treat their workers horribly as well, and they price fix and they collude together, and they get caught doing it all the time. Whether it's for, I don't know, pork jows or chicken feed or whatever it is, and it's like they're routinely getting caught doing this, and it should be a much bigger issue than it is because it actually affects Americans. And so you and I have talked about how we feed our families and the things we eat. And I've talked a lot about where we buy our meat from and why. And, I'll give Mr. Dines a plug here. He's been telling you to eat organic for a long, long time because of the pesticides and the chemicals that they use and how that contributes to lifespans and cancers. But anyway, so I don't know if you saw the story about the chicken this week, but for a while, chicken from the grocery store has been kind of gross. It's not like as tender as it should be. The breasts are gigantic. We know why. They inject them with the growth hormones to get the breast as big as possible because it's capitalism, right? So they can, raise them for the shortest amount of time, get the most amount of meat, and then also price fix the market on top of that. And so,
fucking brilliant.
And so this week we learned that 100% of the chicken sold in U.S. Stores has the white stripe disease, the white striping. And that comes from the chickens being too heavy to support their own weight, that they have to reduce the weight of their muscles, the breast, by incorporating layers of fat into the muscle tissue so that the breast doesn't weigh as much. This is now in every industrial chicken. You can't get a chicken breast that doesn't have this disease, and it's a disease. And there was something else I was going to say there. So first of all, we haven't been buying chicken for a while, and I don't mean to pound my chest. I mean to show you how the markets impact your life and how you can see sort of things materializing and avoid them, right? Similar to moving your family to Austin or Spokane, right? Similar to stopping to eat industrial, mechanized, farmed meat because of this that's going on in there. And so, I didn't really have a follow-up to that other than to say that's sort of where capitalism has been compressed down to, and that's what things are starting to reverberate off of, right? Like that's an extreme, like 100% of your chickens being affected by a disease because of the constraints of your, not the constraints, because of the how your market operates, that you're driven to the bottom line such that now all your chicken is diseased. Like that's an extreme. You can't operate at extremes, right? It's not good. And so you have to come back to some median of that, right? And I think that's what's happening across all sorts of industries and institutions. I just pick on the chicken because that was in the news this week.
Well, and I think the chicken is a good metaphor for, where we've been trending. We talk about Afghanistan. This is a debacle 20 years in the making that both sides contributed to. We knew exactly how it was going to end from the beginning. I don't think, I almost feel like it was just a 20-year gig for defense contractors to get their weight up. And when I say weight, I mean money and accounts at a cost of American and Iraqi and Afghani and Middle Eastern lives and treasure. And so, 20 years of a Titanic type situation where all you had to do was look up. Immigration we touched on earlier. It's been over 35 years since we did anything to actually make a significant change in our immigration policy. It's been promised by every administration on the left and the right. The right always wanting to, actually be stricter on immigration and saying they're going to do that. And it doesn't really change. And then not providing any legal pathway for people to be law abiding and come into this country, without breaking a law. Because the process now, for those that aren't aware, if you're in Mexico and you're a university student and you're a scientist and you can contribute, or if you're just picking fruit and you can come to this country and contribute, and you apply for a visa, you apply for residency. I have family members that have been doing this for 12, 13 years, Nick, waiting. And I also have other friends that are like fuck it, I'm not waiting. I'll pay my $10,000 and I'll make it in 3 or 4 months. And they come here and they work their ass off and have to do so illegally, but that's the price they're willing to pay, to be able to provide some upward mobility for their families. And so, I look at the Fed policy, I look at the wealth inequality, I look at immigration, I look at wars that are just designed, again, in my mind, just to make defense contractors rich and the cost we all pay. And it is clear that we absolutely need a fundamental and structural change in the way the world operates, not just economically or financially, but societally. And, too many things that tell me it's intentional for me not to get cynical about government, hence my libertarian leanings and thoughts of, all things that just leave me alone and let me contribute and let me help society in the way that I can and be law abiding and leave it at that, right?
Everybody eats chicken. That's right. And so that's what I think about when I think about the stuff like that. Like, you got one cohort pissed off about X and you got this other cohort pissed off about Y. Meanwhile, they're all eating fucking chicken with white stripe disease.
100% is a lot, right?
It's a lot. It's like all-time highs for lithium prices. Yeah.
Mr. Hodge, that's all I got. Anything else on your mind? What are you watching in the markets this week? We talked uranium. We talked about the pullback. I think we both agree that we think it's healthy. Could it run another day or two? Sure. Would I be surprised if it lasted into next week? Absolutely, I would be surprised. I think this pullback here, you may see another 5 or 10% down, but I think you should absolutely be using it to your advantage out there. If you missed the first run up, this is a great 20, 30% correction that the market is gifting you. You should be using that to your advantage, in my opinion, to top off those uranium holdings or introduce some uranium to your portfolio. What else? Anything on your end of it, Nick, that you're watching this week other than, the Fed meeting Tuesday, Wednesday, which, again, tinfoil hat and all, I believe is just, they're not going to taper talk now. I mean, I think that's why this sell-off happened. But what are you watching, Mr. Hodge?
So we said earnings season is coming up. That's not here yet, but it'll be here soon. So that's on my radar. I'm looking for a follow through to this market sell off in the beginning of the week, right? We said that, VIX went to its downward trend. I'm interested to see what happens tomorrow, obviously, if there is any follow through to this selling. I'm also keenly watching gold. Gold's gotten its ass handed to it. It's been very volatile. It's been over 18. It's been under 18. It's been moving by wide candles. I'm interested to see what the gold market has to say about things over the next couple of days.
Same. I love that we just went 50 minutes and didn't even bring gold up, right? Which again, on a day where the market was down 1,000 points at one point, for gold to be up $10, and I think it closed up higher. I think something like $11 or something like that. Did what it's supposed to do. Yes, not exciting. Yes, it's not Bitcoin 100,000. But I tell you what, the gold that I keep is still worth pretty much the same that it was last month and the month before that, and a bastion of stability right now, and that's what it's designed to do. And we'll have fun with the gold price later, but I think for now I'm with you. I'm definitely watching and curious to see which way it turns.
Well, and I think we've said that there were buying opportunities in recent weeks. I told you I was buying Kinross. Kinross is like pretty well at the top of the gold food chain, right? And so today, what am I looking at? Like, you go all the way to the top, and things like Franco are looking like buys now. And so, like, it's right there.
Agreed. No, I think plenty to chew on. It'll be an interesting week, as it always is. I am Gerardo Del Real, along with Mr. Nick Hodge. This was episode 135 of Bizarro World. Say goodbye, Nick.
See ya.